Question number 2. Even if one tends to be conservative, how could anyone vote Republican in 2022 given the GOP propensity, which has become a cultural norm in the party, to lie about elections if they don't win? Shouldn't that alone severely reduce one's confidence in virtually any Republican candidate? Okay, another good question, and something I'm sure a lot of people are thinking. So, when Trump didn't commit to a peaceful transition, it was in one of the debates with Biden. I can't remember which one. The anchor basically asked him straight up, "Would you compete? Would you commit to a peaceful transition?" And his answer wasn't yes. It was hemming and hawing and saying, not necessarily. And all of that raised an immediate red flag for me because as important as the candidates in any particular election are, what's more important to me is that they play by the rules of the game. So if you don't agree to play by the rules of the game, that makes me more nervous than almost any plausible policy position any candidate could have, because once again, the point of the peaceful transition of power, the point of democracy and electing a new leader every 4 years is not just so that we get leaders that institute policies that we, the people, want. That's one point of democracy. A more fundamental and arguably more important point of democracy is to act as a kind of discharge of the anger that people are going to feel, right? When you have a monarchy, what happens when the people get angry? They get angry enough, they devolve into revolution, they overthrow the king, and there's bloodshed in the streets, sometimes for years. There's uncertainty as to who's ruling. A lot of the point of democracy is to act, for these elections every few years, to act as a peaceful discharge of energy and resentment. And when candidates don't commit to that, it makes me very nervous, because I think that's one of the most important features of democracy, full stop. Okay, so having got that out of the way, and also having said that, what Trump has done on this point is just absolutely egregious, actually trying to pressure Republicans to overturn votes, to declare the election stolen, using his power and clout as president to do that, and all the rest. It's all horrible. To get to this specific question, the questioner here says, how could anyone vote for any Republican given that this lying about elections is a GOP propensity, to use the words of the questioner? So that, I think, is unfair. I think, it's one thing to note how cowardly most Republicans have been, even though most of them know that Trump lost pretty much fair and square. How cowardly they've been in, outside of Liz Cheney and a few others, from actually standing up for democracy against party, right? Putting principle over party. Very few of them have done that. It's one thing to observe that. It's another thing to say that because Trump tried to steal the election, therefore every Republican is going to try to steal the election. That, I think, is an invalid conclusion to draw. I mean, you should remember just how atypical a Republican Trump was and is in some way still. I think it's far too soon to say that the Republican Party is now the party for all time of stealing elections, right? I think that would be, I think that's jumping to conclusions. The last thing I'll say about this is Democrats should be a little bit less holier than thou on the issue of claiming that elections have been stolen. A few things to remind people of on this issue. How many Democrats believed that, Al Gore really won the election in 2000? Now, that election was admittedly much closer, but still there were lots of prominent Democrats, and probably lots to this day, that will say that that election was stolen. And you can't really say that that's, if you're really going to lampoon anyone who's claiming an election was stolen, you're going to have to lampoon a lot of those people too. Another thing to remember, at one point 2/3 of Democrats, something like that, according to a YouGov poll I remember, believed that Russia had tampered with the vote count to elect Trump in 2016, right? Which is pretty close to a belief that Russia helped Trump steal the election, right? That was a pretty widely subscribed belief in roughly late 2016, early 2017. You also have an example like Stacey Abrams who, at least as of 2020, I haven't checked since, was still claiming that Brian Kemp had stole the governorship of Georgia from her, even though she lost by like 50,000 votes 2 years prior. All this to say, Democrats should not think themselves innocent of this particular sin just because Trump has done the most important, most egregious example of it. So that's all I'll say about that.